Hello and welcome to the world. Welcome, Gord Tulloch. Okay, I'm going to call our meeting to order. I'd like to inform the public that the meeting's being videotaped and live stream is a matter of public record. Trustees, please be reminded to use your microphones whenever you speak so your comments can be recorded. During the time for question period, in the public section, we would ask any interested participants to come to the podium, state their name, where they're from, and make their comments or, ask their questions. And thank everybody in advance. We have O Canada, so could you, if you can stand, please stand for O Canada. Again, thank you to the students from Dugald School for singing that. We have a treaty acknowledgement, and Trustee Pachuski, you're going to go ahead and read that for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We acknowledge the traditional land upon which Sunrise School resides as Treaty 1 territory. We honor our partnership with Canada's original peoples and respect the gifts of Indigenous history, culture, and language. We commit to moving forward in partnership with our communities in a spirit of collaboration and reconciliation.
Thank you, Jared. We'll have the adoption of the agenda. We resolve the board approve the adopted agenda. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Trustee Barry, seconded by Trustee Pachuski. We'll vote online. And it was passed 9-0. Thank you. Moving forward, we talk about chair's comments. The only thing that I'd like to say is, Kathy, I think you guys did a great job on Friday. Pretty tough call with regard to weather across, and you got the information out very early. So I appreciate what you did, Kath, in getting that information out. And I think that, I don't know how many rural school divisions were open, and it wasn't a great day to be outside, so it was a good call to get it done. So thanks very much for going ahead and doing that. Nice work. Share a story. Open to trustees about sharing a story. Anyone have the floor, want to share?
I just wanted to send recommendations to our superintendent and staff for organizing a professional development day for our division. It was very well attended and very well received. I spoke with many people there, and they were having a wonderful day, really appreciated it, and I thought it was really well run and well received. Good job. Thank you.
Don?
I'd like to mention two things about Whitemouth. Last Wednesday, they had the Terry Fox run, and they raised over $2,000 for the Terry Fox. There's only 168 students there, so that was worthwhile. And they also had an Orange Shirt Day. The grade 7 and 8, actually, there was 4 students from the grade 7 and 8 class that did a presentation to the whole school about the Orange Shirt Day and why it was being formed and what was the value behind it.
Thanks, Don. Others? Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to acknowledge that the CPF Beausejour chapter is hosting a movie night en français on October 24th at Beausejour's earlier school, and that's open to anybody, and it is a free event. It's just to promote the French language and the immersion program. So, thank you.
Anyone else? I certainly need to recognize the work of, I think, Leanne, you're the one that runs our crisis team. So certainly, Leanne, thanks for the work that you and your team do in going at, what's that? And Lars, thanks very much for the work that you do in going ahead and doing that. We had a tough incident out in Whitemouth with one of our employees, and of course we've had a passing of one of our senior administrators, and that's not easy. And so certainly thank you to all the people that have been able to support each other in this event. So thank you very much for doing that. We have a board delegation. Kath, are you going to go ahead and introduce the board, the delegation?
Hi there. I think it's Alyssa, and you've got some folks with you as well. So Alyssa, if you want to come to the chair here, there's a microphone for you in your, is it Mom Andrea? No? Hi, Crystal. So Alyssa and Crystal, if we could use the microphone just so that it's in our recording, that would be awesome.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman and school trustees.
Before you start, I'm going to give you 10 minutes. I'm going to give you a little bit of wave if you get going, and I'll probably cut you off around 10 minutes. And then if there are some questions, people ask you some questions. So the floor is yours. Thanks for coming.
Okay, thanks again. So we're here today on behalf of Claire. We are trying to acquire bus transportation for Claire from her daycare in Garson to the École Beausejour Early Years School. And Alyssa chose Beausejour to live, raise her daughter in a safe environment. The community is a nice, friendly community. People are helpful. And Alyssa works in Selkirk. Ever since she's moved here 3 years ago, she tried to find daycare in Beausejour. She was unsuccessful, so she had to keep her in Garson. And Garson's nice. It's on the way for her to go to work. She's a single mom. And her mom lives out in Birds Hill, so this is what works for her, right? And I'm going to now pass it on to Alyssa, and she can describe what happened.
Okay, I need help with busing for my daughter. I understand that I'm like 3 minutes from the school, and that's the walking zone, but her daycare is in Garson, and it's a licensed daycare, which is a pickup that already stops there and picks up kids that are exactly in her class, but won't pick up my daughter. And I've had this going since May when I chose to fill out the forms, and I filled out the bus forms thinking that she'd get on the bus. I've heard nothing from transportation. I called 2 weeks before. They had no answers for me. Called a week before, still no answers. And then, I still have no answers for why she can't get on the bus. I don't seem like it's fair that she gets to not take a bus. Like, I understand that like so I get that we're in the walking distance, but her daycare is in Garson. I have no other way to get her to school. Daycare has been helping me get her to school on time, and she's in kindergarten. She cannot walk to school by herself. I've had to change my hours at work to get her to school. I've had to take vacation days, sick days.
We're just wondering, like, when she registered Claire in May or June, Alyssa's just wondering why she wasn't contacted, that she would have no bus. Like, she just assumed that she filled out all the paperwork, that she would receive bus transportation. And then 3 days before school started, she, nobody contacted her. She just, how did you find out? She called to find out if Claire was going to have a bus and what bus number, and then that's when she found out that Claire would have no bus transportation from the daycare to Ecole Beausejour.
And I was told the bus is overfull, which I understand. I think there's 75 kids that have to go on that bus, but it's supposed to be 73 kids or something, they told me. So what if all of a sudden one day all 75 kids go on the bus? You're going to tell the next kid that they're picking up that they can't go on the bus. So why can't they have two different buses going that way? Like, the daycare is a licensed daycare and it stops at that stop.
I guess if you guys have questions now, then it might kind of prompt us, might add to it.
Thank you, Alyssa. We know it's not easy to come out here and present, so thank you for going ahead and doing that. Excuse me. Do any of the trustees have questions for Alyssa? Diane?
You mentioned she's been going there for 3 years, the same daycare? Okay, and how old is she?
She's 5.
She's 5 years old now, but she's been there for 3 years at that.
Yep.
Okay. And you're taking her there in the morning at what time?
7:30. She gets dropped off and picked up at 4:30.
And she gets picked up at 4:30 from there by you too?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I just can't change my hours at work to get her to school. Like, I've had to, because school is opposite hours of my work schedule. I've had to miss work, leave work early to go get her.
Thank you. Others? Art?
Just so, well, thanks, Alyssa. Thanks for coming out tonight. Just so I clarify on the situation here, this is the first year your daughter's gone to school, it'd be fair to say?
Right, yeah.
And you live within the walking distance now? Is that what, I think you said that earlier?
Yeah.
Okay.
But her daycare is in Garson. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Jared?
Thank you for coming out, Alyssa. We've had a couple of discussions previous to this evening. So what has transportation told you? You said you haven't got any answers, but...
They told me the bus was full. They told me she was not eligible. They told me they would get back to me. They never got back to me. Or I'd keep calling. I got no answers from them at all. They haven't really helped me at all with the situation. Told me it's not their problem. And yeah. Meanwhile, one of the kids at the daycare that goes to kindergarten in Beausejour is in French, I understand that, but why isn't he going to Tyndall? Why does he get priority over my daughter to go to school? I'm not going to pull her out of school. I need to come up with something.
Anyone else? Is there anything else that you want to add, Alyssa?
Like, is there anything that you can help? Is there any way you can help her to help get her child to school?
So for tonight, what we've asked you to do is come and make a presentation to the board, and you have. Thank you for doing that.
Okay.
Our board then won't debate it here with you. Our board will debate the issue. We will ask transportation for information about checking where our policies are with regard to transportation. So we will We will collect information, and then the board will make a decision. The 9 people will make a decision on your request. So we will get back to you. I won't say we will get back to you. Kathy will get back to you with regard to what the board has decided. Obviously, that you'd like to get this decided as quickly as possible. We'd like to make decisions as quickly as possible as well. I'm not telling you we're getting back to you tomorrow, but we're getting back to you as soon as we can. Is that fair? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lisa? Thank you. Okay, thank you. So welcome, Lisa from BDO. You've got 3 minutes. No, you've got 15 minutes to present, Lisa. And then there'll be 5-minute questions from the trustees for your presentation. The floor is yours.
Okay. So we're going to start with page 3 of the presentation. So this is the independent auditor's report. So the most important paragraph on here is the second paragraph, which just states how we have issued a clean audit opinion on the consolidated financial position of the division as of June 30th, 2019, and that the statements are in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. On the following page, you'll see that this report is tentatively dated for approval for today's date of October 15th, 2019. Moving on to page 5 is the independent practitioner's reasonable assurance report on compliance. So this is a compliance report to ensure that the enrollment reporting requirements are met by the school division. And then for this report, near the bottom, our opinion states that the division has complied with the specified requirements as at September 30th, 2018 in all significant respects. So this report is also dated tentatively for today's date for approval. And then moving on to page 12. Is the consolidated statement of financial position. I'm not going to go into detail for this statement because I'm going to go through each fund separately because this consolidated statement makes up the operating fund, the capital fund, and the special purpose funds. I'll just draw your attention to the bottom of this statement for the accumulated surplus, which shows a total of $16,159,000. This balance is the year-ending balance for the accumulated surplus, and more details are on page 23 for what this is made up of. So if we go to page 23, this is the analysis of consolidated accumulated surplus. So this just shows that accumulated surplus balance is made up of the operating fund accumulated surplus of $1,925,000, the equity and tangible capital assets of $13,051,000, the capital reserve accounts of $719,000, the school generated funds of $409,000, and the other special purpose funds of around $54,000, totaling the consolidated accumulated surplus balance that I previously said of $16,159,000. So moving on, I'm going to go into the operating fund, the schedule of financial position, which is the next page. This shows the total financial assets of $21,701,000 for the year, and the total liabilities for the operating fund of $20,410,000, showing a net financial asset of $1,290,000. The total of the non-financial assets is $635,000 for the year, and then the accumulated surplus for the operating fund is $1,925,000. The following statement is the schedule of revenue expenses and accumulated surplus for the operating fund. So this shows the total revenue of $67,293,000. The details of these revenue can be found on pages 26 to 28 of this report. And then the total expenses are $66,290,000. And the details of these total expenses can be found on pages 29 to 37 of this report. I won't go through those in detail, but they're there. The current year surplus before non-vested sick leave is $1,003,000. The non-vested sick leave expense for the year is $98,000, arriving at the current year surplus after non-vested sick leave of $905,000. And below that is the net transfers to the capital fund of $1,439,000, and then the transfers from the special purpose funds of $45,000, arriving at the current year deficit of $489,524. And the closing accumulated surplus for the operating fund is $1,926,000. The next page that I'm going to highlight is page 38, which is the operating fund, the detail of transfers to the capital fund. So this page just breaks down the transfers from the operating fund to the capital fund. The net transfers to the capital fund during the current year was $1,439,479. Now I'm going to go through the capital fund. The following page is the schedule of financial position. So this shows the total financial assets of $1,261,000, and then the total liabilities of $33,021,000, arriving at a net debt balance of $31,760,000. The net tangible capital assets for the year were $45,531,000, with an accumulated surplus of $13,770,000. So this accumulated surplus balance is comprised of the reserve accounts and the equity and tangible capital assets. The following page is the schedule of revenues, expenses, and accumulated surplus of the capital fund. So the total revenue for the capital fund was $2,961,000, and the total expenses was $4,253,000, arriving at a current year deficit of $1,291,000. And the net transfers from the operating fund were $1,439,000, resulting in the current year surplus of $147,554. For a closing accumulated surplus balance of $13,770,000. And on page 42, there is the schedule of capital reserve accounts for the year ended June 30th, 2019. So the opening balance for these reserve accounts totaled $1,185,000. The total additions for the year, which are the transfers, were $755,347, and the total withdrawals were $1,221,143, arriving at a closing balance for the 2019 year of $718,955. Next, I'm going to go over the special purpose fund. So the following page is the schedule of financial position. The total financial assets are $530,000 for the year, and the total liabilities are $66,000 for the year, arriving at an accumulated surplus of $463,511. And then it shows a breakdown of what the accumulated surplus is made up of. There's the school-generated funds accumulated surplus of $409,000, and then the other funds accumulated surplus of $53,000. Following that is the schedule of revenue, expenses, and accumulated surplus. The total revenue for the special purpose fund is $936,000, and then the total expenses is $933,000, arriving at a current year surplus of $2,924. Transfers to the operating fund were $45,000, and the net current year deficit was $42,000, with a closing accumulated surplus of $463,511. And that concludes the presentation of the consolidated audited financial statements. I'm going to go through the Ada and Dyson Hewitt Scholarship Fund now. So on page 66, we have the independent auditor's report for the Ada and Dyson Hewitt Scholarship Fund. The second paragraph of this report issues a clean audit opinion with the exception of the revenue from donations. This is common with many charitable organizations and the prior year audits. And this report is also dated for October 15th, 2019. On page 68 is the statement of financial position. So this shows the total assets for the year of $30,772, the total liabilities of $3,600, and the total surplus of $27,172. And following that page is the statement of operations and changes in surplus. The total interest revenue for the year was $623. The total expenses was $3,595, arriving at a deficiency of revenue over expenses for the year of $2,972, resulting in the ending surplus balance of $27,172. And that was my brief presentation of that scholarship fund.
Thank you, Lisa. So that we can get this on the table, we need to make a be it resolved that the board accept the draft audited financial statement for Sunrise School Division to June 30th, 2019 as presented. I need a mover and a seconder for it to get it on the floor to ask questions. A mover. Trustee Paczewski. Trustee Russ. Sorry, I had a blank there. It was looking at you, and all I could think of you was Diane. Sorry, Russ. I was trying to get that out. Okay, so if there are any questions, he's never going to let me live that down now, is he? Okay. Are there any questions now that it's on the table? Okay, hearing none, then we'll vote on that resolution, please. We're just checking as to... What's that? Technical difficulty, we need to make sure that we're... Do we need to do this by hand, Stacy? All right. My calling Russ, Diane kind of flew you off. I know that. That's my fault. I apologize again. So now it's available for us to vote. Thanks, Stacy. So it's carried 9-0. Thank you. We then have the no, one more. We now have be it resolved the board accept the draft audited financial statements for the Ada Dyson Hewitt Scholarship Fund to June 30th, 2019 as presented. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Art, seconded by Diane. Any questions to it? Hearing none, we'll vote. Mango, that was late. There was 9-0. Thank you very much. Everyone's looking at me. I was wondering why. We have another motion that we are deferring, that people would have in front of them about being resolved. The board accept the draft audited statement for Sunrise School Division Scholarship and Donation Fund. We've agreed that we're going to defer that to collect some more information. So Lisa, on behalf of the board, we'd like to thank BDO for the work that you guys did. And what I really liked hearing was that we got a clean, what was the word you used? A clean statement back from you guys. Thank you very much for that work. We appreciate it. Thank you. I read that all. Thanks. Kathy, would you like to introduce our two fine young gentlemen from Beauce Earlier School?
Sorry, I have to balance the whole speaking into the microphone, getting the PowerPoint presentation on, and figuring out who the heck the fine young gentlemen are from Beauce's early years. But I will introduce our directeur, Mike Carter, and our directeur adjoint. Thank you for the bilingualism on your front slide there, Anthony Penner. I am going to turn it over to my assistant superintendent, Leanne Peters. She works with the schools on their school planning, and so she's going to tell you a little preamble about their presentation and then give them the floor.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, these fine young gentlemen, I'm delighted that they are here with us this evening to talk about the work that they are doing at Beausejour Early Years School this year. Now, I just wanted to give a couple of reminders that we've asked the schools to focus on their singular school goal, and we know there's super awesome things going on, and you often share them with us in your Share a Story, but that's not their focus this evening. Additionally, I have given them some instruction that they are presenting on most of their school plan from last year because we are only a month and a half into this school year. So they'll give you a recap of last year and then a snapshot into the great things to come. So I'll turn it over to them. Thanks.
All right. So as Kathy had said, my name is Mike Carter. I'm the principal at École Beausejour Earlier School. This is my first year at École Beausejour. So being asked to come here today and present poses some difficulties in that I am learning about the school myself as we go through things. So Tony's here with me tonight to help me along with some of this. I guess really to begin with looking at the current school goals. Kathy, if you could change the slide, please. We are in a bit of a process. I'm going to talk a bit about the process that's occurring at École Beausejour Early Years this evening. We're kind of looking at everything in terms of why are we doing what we're doing? What is the purpose behind things? I've been asking a lot of questions in the time that I've been there now. One of the things we started looking at was our school plan. And so what you see in front of you here today are two goals, one in the area of literacy and one in the area of numeracy. These were created back in the spring with input from staff based on evidence at that time. But we have already changed this document. One of the things I am trying to emphasize is that these school plans are a living document. It's something we need to come back to over and over again as it provides us direction. Direction in terms of what we are focusing our professional development on, direction on where we are spending our funds, because this is based on evidence that's been collected. It's evidence about what we know about our students and their learning needs. Right away, we started tweaking a few things with the school plan. In the spring, the school plan had actually 5 different goals to it. We've narrowed it down to 2. In talking with the staff at the school and with senior admin here, and Leanne in particular, we recognized that some of these goals were based not in student learning outcomes, but rather in strategies. Good strategies, proven strategies, but they're not outcomes. So we started tweaking things. We tried streamlining things. One of the things I'm trying to emphasize with the staff is that we don't want to spread ourselves too thin. Last year's school plan, I think Tony will talk about this a bit, we had 4 separate goals in the area of numeracy alone. It ended up being a multitude of goals. You end up getting spread very thin, and we don't dig deep into one area. So one of the things I'm trying to emphasize this year is making sure that we focus on an area that's based in evidence of student learning needs, and then digging deep into those areas to ensure that learning is happening. So this year, we're focused on literacy and numeracy. The goals are there. And when I say a living document, one of the things that's come out this week, even that Tony and I have been talking about, is we have it worded that by June 2021. My question is, why are we waiting till 2021? This is something we should be focused on now. And we should be looking at the end result at the end of the school year. If the end result is that we need to spend more time focusing in this area, then by all means, the goal continues. But to say a goal is going to stand in place for 2-3 years doesn't give us the opportunity to go back to it nearly as often as we need to be. So coming back to the idea of this is a living document, we want to make sure that we are looking at this document throughout the school year and coming back to this over and over again as it gives us direction. So that's a little bit about our school goals for this year. I'm going to turn it over to Tony here, who's going to talk a bit about the school goals from last year and some of the great things that happened last year.
Thank you. So as Mike mentioned, we had a number of goals last year in the areas of all 4 pillars of the divisional plan. On top of that, as Mike mentioned, this is his first year at the school. I'm not that far ahead of him. I'm only in my second year at the school. So last year was really a year of learning and starting to understand some of the culture and some of the processes and procedures there as well. What we found from our goals last year, I think was more important than what the data showed us was how we constructed the parameters of some of our evidence. We used evidence from Term 2 reading and writing marks on the provincial report card. We used plotting on our reading and writing continuums, teacher feedback, and another piece that we use in our school is affectionately called the Grey Binder in French Immersion, Blue Binder in English, where there's a series of assessments that are done at each of the grade levels. Some of them are only done in kindergarten, some are done kindergarten to grade 3, some are done all the way through, that kind of inform future assessment and progress, and it's an ongoing piece that moves with the student. Each student has their own individual grade binder that moves with them from kindergarten right through to grade 5, and it really allows us to watch that progress and look where we need to individually target the support for those students. So what we found in literacy, if you want to move the slide forward one, was that all students were involved in a balanced literacy program. That was one of our goals because we had noticed a disproportionate scores in our reading and writing levels for our students, where a student might score, say, a 4 on the provincial report card in reading and a 2 on writing. We were trying to dig into why that might happen. So part of that, one of the strategies was to ensure that all classes were engaged in a balanced literacy program, and that certainly happens. Now, defining what a balanced literacy program, that's one of the parameters we need to dig into a little bit further. Certainly it involves purposeful reading and writing at each grade level on a daily basis. We also know that approximately 89% of all students had grade level scores in literacy according to report card data. This also looks really good. Once again, grade level can be anywhere from a 1 to a 4 within the provincial report card. So our students overall are very close to where we want them to be, grade level wise, but once again, I think the bigger question that we found was defining our parameters on what reciprocal scores look like for each student, and also how we're assessing or how we're setting our target or our goals for our students was something that really came and rung true in literacy, and something that I think Mike will talk about a little more in our PLCs as our groups are digging deeper into some of these areas within the school. Moving on to numeracy, as Mike mentioned, we had a lot of goals in the numeracy area. To take you back a couple years, they looked at some of the different strands and some of the different reporting areas in numeracy, actually in numeracy and literacy, and formed, I guess for lack of a better word, subcommittees where we had team leaders, which we used some SPDM money for, to work on developing assessments in each of these areas, and then so that it would be a common assessment across grade levels that would progress from grade 1 through to grade 5. So some of the data that we used as evidence for progress in numeracy, problem-solving assessment, number of the day assessment, and mental math survey. All of these are pieces that are in the gray binder that each teacher has access to, and each student has an individual report on it. So that was the evidence they used to track our progress in that goal area. So what we found was once again, quite positive in terms of how our students are doing. In knowledge and understanding, we were approaching the goal and making progress towards achieving it. We were closest to achieving this goal. A few students required support in achieving the goal. Problem solving was a little bit more difficult. This is a competency that required the most support moving forward. And once again, the parameters of how we're measuring that success, because there is a language piece that comes into problem solving, because we're starting to dig into some deeper thinking and also some of the students' ability to explain their mathematical thinking. And when you pair that with some of the language challenges for the students, especially the younger students who are in French immersion, you would anticipate that you're going to see more of a challenge in problem solving when they're attempting to explain their mathematical thinking. Mental math, also approaching the goal and making progress towards achieving it. So with each of these goals, we're doing a whole lot of assessment to determine it. A lot of the focus, I think, right now that we're seeing in some of the conversation we're talking is some of the instructional strategies that we're going to dig into in each of these areas. So that's just a bit of the history. I'm going to pass it back to Mike on our plan.
Thank you. School-based professional development plan. This is an area that we have spent a lot of time in already this school year. Coming into the school, I was very excited to see some of the work that had already been done in the area of professional learning communities. At Beausejour Early Years, we have a number of staff who have the opportunity on a regular basis to meet with colleagues to collaborate. So there is time built within the schedule for a number of the staff. For those staff who don't fall within that, usually our specialty areas such as phys ed and that, we're working on thinking a little bit outside the box and partnering up with other schools even around this. For those of you familiar with professional learning communities, they can be very successful in their utilization for professional development. They can also be very unsuccessful if not done right. So one of the main areas I have focused on is the implementation of the professional learning communities, and specifically the implementation of a collaborative inquiry model within those professional learning communities, and making sure that our teachers have the framework and guidelines to work within that's going to ensure success for those communities. So for this year, our professional learning communities are really the backbone of our professional development plan or model for the school. That is where a lot of time is being spent. Those professional learning communities at this point now, to give you an idea of what we're doing, so collaborative inquiry model, I've asked that all the groups start by identifying what are the student learning needs. And so we've been working through that so far. And not just what are our students' learning needs, but getting very specific about what they are and ensuring that that is grounded in evidence. Ideally triangulating some of that evidence. And this gives us an opportunity to work with our staff around how are we triangulating evidence within the school. That's the starting point. From there, we have to then create a question of inquiry for the group, or the group's creating it, an action plan for the group, as well as part of that action plan is what is the evidence we're collecting along the way to show that we're moving towards improving student learning. The model, there's a variety of models out there. This year you were using a model that I had learned through or from Jennifer Donahue. It is a model that is grounded in research and has been very well accepted by staff to this point. So really our school-based professional development plan for this year is very much grounded in our PLC models. And those PLC models are based upon our student learning needs. Some of the other criteria that fits within that is these student learning, these PLCs have to fit within our school plan as well. So we're focusing on the areas of literacy and numeracy within these groups. And they have to be tangible goals or tangible items in terms of what they are reaching to achieve. And it has to be very clear. So that's a little bit on our PLCs and what we're implementing. If you could turn to the next slide, please, Kathy. This is a picture of what we're doing right now. I threw a picture up. One of the things I'm stressing with staff right now is making our learning visible. They're hearing this a lot. when I say making our learning visible, this is a bulletin board in our staff room at Ecole Beausier Early Years. Every single PLC, when they're done that day's task or assignment, however you want to word it, what they're working on for that day, posts it in the staff room for the entire staff to see. Two reasons for that. Number one, others can see some of the great work that's happening within our building. They might prompt more questions. It might help to give clarification or direction for other groups. The other thing is it has a level of accountability built right into it. Every group is expected to be posting their work in the staff room. That was my first step. In a minute here, I'll talk a bit about how we're making learning visible throughout the school and into the community, but that was step one of the process, is making sure that our learning within the schools is visible. What you see in front of you on the left-hand, my left-hand side, is all the sticky notes. First session, to give you an idea of what we worked on, that was the teachers collaborating around what are our student learning needs based on our beliefs. Not based on evidence, based on their perception at that moment in time. I didn't give them any warning what we were doing. That is what they saw. The assignment then was to go back to their classroom and find what evidence do you have, either that supports this or doesn't support this. And that's what you see on the white pages on that bulletin board, are teachers coming back saying this is the student learning need and this is the evidence to support that. And that started the groundwork for further discussion around where are our PLCs focusing in terms of professional development to begin the school year. The main thing here is to stress it's based on evidence, it's based on our student learning needs. It's also opened up lots of questions around how are we triangulating data in identifying what our student learning needs are. So that's a bit about where we're at right now in the process. I'll turn it over to Tony to talk about school-based decision-making dollars from last year.
I get pretty excited when Mike and I have the conversations about where our staff is going with our PLCs. So going back and talking about last year, I think we used our dollars very wisely last year, and I think it set us up quite nicely for this year. One of the other things that I'm just going to point out about our PLCs that works out very nicely, we just happen to have a school calendar this year where the way the PD days and the admin days sorted out, we don't have our whole staff together for a while. So having these smaller professional learning communities allows us to get professional development rolling sooner with these smaller groups, because sometimes getting momentum with a larger group certainly is a bit more of a task. So I think it's really worked out quite nicely that the PLCs are our focus this year. Last year, as I mentioned, we spent a lot of time kind of developing the assessments in some of the different goal areas. So we use team leaders in areas at numeracy, languages, and technology. We use release time for collaboration, kindergarten specialists, as Mike mentioned. We have a fantastic timetable that does build collaboration in for many of our teachers. Unfortunately, for some of them, there isn't that opportunity, so we did use some release time for that. Additionally, as most of you know, we are a UNESCO school, so there's a release time to support UNESCO networking, as well as student learning and ICT. And finally, we also brought in, with all that focus on numeracy and literacy, we also brought in an EA to work to support some intensive programming that some of our student services teams would have set up for some of the students that needed that intensive support. Back to Mike.
So our SBDM dollars for this year, where are we putting our school-based decision-making dollars? Some of it's to be determined. The specifics are to be determined. At this point, I have set aside the majority of those funds with the plan to support the PLCs. So part of the action plan that these PLCs are creating is to provide what do you need in terms of resources. And this is going to be very much dependent on the groups with our input in terms of what those resources are. Is it attending further PD? Is it providing release time so that we can go into each other's classrooms and observe each other teaching and provide feedback or learning and from others who are mentoring possible implementation of programs? It could be a variety of things. It could be for purchasing resources. So at this point in time, we are putting a huge emphasis on our PLCs, and part of that is making sure that teachers have the support they need to do this properly. The issue with that is I don't have these action plans at this time, so I actually can't say specifically how those dollars are being spent or if it's going to be the majority of our SBDM dollars. I've earmarked it for that at this point in time. I should have some action plans coming in the next few weeks. if not sooner with some groups who are rolling right along with this. And then I will have a better idea of where the SBDM dollars are specifically going to be spent. But at this point in time, I'm building a big emphasis on making sure these PLCs are successful. I see it as a good use of our funds, as it's grounded in the evidence of our students' needs. And so at this point in time, that's sort of where SBDM dollars have been allocated. It may change. If it comes back that we're only going to use half those dollars are needed for PLCs, then we will look at what other needs the school has at that time. So that's a bit about where our SBDM dollars are allocated for this school year at this point in time. Oh, the other thing I should mention is Tony just reminded me, we also, with these PLCs, it goes in cycles. So we might have a group who's focused on one objective to start the year. Depending on the objective, they might end up rolling two or three cycles in a year, focusing on a variety of things within literacy and numeracy. Depending on what they're doing, though, it might take longer for other groups. There's no set amount of time, so we might have a multitude of action plans by the end of the school year and be allocating resources as we go through the school year. So that's another important thing to note. So I won't have an exact number in terms of SBDM dollars come October 31st because it's an ongoing process throughout the school year. Next steps. Yeah, being new to the school, there's trying to figure out what is the next step was kind of where I was at the end of August as I got to know the staff. I must say that it's a wonderful staff, wonderful community. The Beausejour earlier school has been a very warm, welcoming place for me. And the staff work really well together, incredibly well together. So there's lots of positive things that have happened in the past there. And so we're trying to build on some of these real positive things that have happened in the past. One of the items I'm starting with staff this year is a shared vision. What is our vision for École Beausejour earlier school? We have a vision statement. I'll be completely honest. I asked the staff, EAs and teachers and custodial staff, everyone who was at our opening day orientation, what is the vision for the school? It's on our letterhead. What is the school vision? I had one person raise their hand halfway in the air and put it back down again. There is no ownership for it at this time. It's a very well-written vision. When it was written, probably 12 years ago, it was very good. One of the things I'm finding right now is that we have some things in place that no one has ownership for within the building. And it's important that if we have a shared vision within the school, every single person within that school, the people within our CPF and a PAC, everyone should have ownership for that. That is important, so that we're all coming from a common place when it comes to collaborating and decision making. So one of the items I have on our list of things to do this year, and I've shared this with the staff and it was very well accepted, and I'll be sharing with CPF tomorrow night and PAC on the 28th when we meet next, is the idea of looking at our shared vision. What is the vision for École Beausejour earlier school? And revisiting that once again. Other items for next steps, further development of our school plan to make sure that it is reflective of our student learning needs and it is based on collected evidence, and to make sure that it remains a living document is something we are referring to throughout the school year. Continued implementation of collaborative inquiry models. So the continued implementation of our PLCs that I've already spoken about is a big part of the next step for our school. And the last one, which I think is very important, and kind of fits within the shared vision and our PLCs really well, is making sure that the learning that's happening within the school is visible. That learning should be visible in the community, within the school, and within the classrooms. Especially if we talk about some of the making visible, learning visible within the classrooms and some of the work of Hattie and some of the research that's been done around there, it shows it has an impact on student learning. It's important that we're accountable to the community and to each other. So making sure that we put our learning out there so people know all the great things that are happening at École Beausejour earlier school. So some of the things that we're working on around that, we're putting a bulletin board up at the front of the school, and it will show student learning. It will have our school plan with goals clearly posted, and it will show student learning that's occurring within the building that's moving towards those. So that's part of it. How are we getting the message out to the community? How are we utilizing our school website, etc. These are all pieces we're looking at as our next steps. And that concludes our presentation. Unless, Tony, did you have anything else? Or? All right, are there any questions at this time?
Thanks, Mike. Do any of us have questions? Don?
A tough question. We know that in order for a teacher to become a early years teacher, they either spend 5 or 6 years training, depending on what stream they go into. They should be learning their strategies, how to teach, and all that stuff. Why is it so important to have continued in professional development?
Importance of professional development. The job of a teacher is an incredibly difficult job. That's the basis of it. Our teachers are having to work with a number of students coming to the classroom with a wide range of learning needs, wide range of social emotional needs. Our teachers need to be as well equipped as possible in meeting those needs. Most research will show that the most important factor in the students' learning is the ability of the teacher. It is therefore the job as the administrator to ensure that we support those teachers in ongoing learning. The best teachers are those teachers that never stop learning and are always trying to improve their practice to meet the diversity that they find within their classrooms.
I think professional learning is often used as a blanket term, and oftentimes it's viewed as going out of the building to learn. We're fortunate to have a staff that have a lot of, that we have some expert teachers. We have some phenomenal teachers on staff. Professional learning, as Mike mentioned, can include release time for the opportunity for them to collaborate. A lot of recent work shows that collective efficacy, the belief that common belief that these students can learn and that these individual teachers can make a difference and that they can make a difference together when they're working towards that goal, has a tremendous impact on student achievement. So the opportunity for them to observe some of their peers, some of their colleagues, I should say, demonstrating how they are working towards achieving some of these goals is a tremendously strong form of professional development and professional learning. So when we're talking professional development, we're not just talking about sending teachers away to bring something back. Sometimes it's develop that ability within the building. So that's just kind of one step further in professional development, not just external supports.
Thank you. Art?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, gentlemen, for the presentation. Very informative. I just like clarification. This professional learning committee, I've never heard this word before. And so is that made up of teachers? I got a couple of questions. So it's another duty a teacher has to do, would be fair to say. And has this been used in other schools to the benefit of students? Because that's what we're here for benefiting the students.
Good questions. So professional learning communities, essentially, education has a lot of different terminology, but really what it means is we're bringing a group of teachers together to collaborate around a common purpose. That's really what it is in a nutshell. Professional learning communities is a very common practice. You'll find it throughout Sunrise and throughout other school divisions. How schools and divisions utilize those professional learning communities and ensure that they're effective, that does vary quite greatly. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to make sure we put an emphasis on putting a framework in place that is based in research and evidence that is successful. I hope that helps answer the question.
So you won't have those numbers for research till the end of the school year? That'd be fair to say?
Actually, it depends. Once one learning cycle is done, we will have some evidence once a learning cycle is done, and ideally, teachers should be collecting evidence all the way along that process as part of their learning.
So when could you give us numbers back to the trustees here, the board, to show it's successful?
Now you're asking the hard questions. Good question. I would, by the end of the school year, we should have some concrete data supporting, and it will be reflected within our school plan on the report as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation, gentlemen. So you mentioned in your presentation that your focus for the SBDM dollars for this year were mainly at this point to support the work that your PLCs are doing. Is that correct?
Yep.
So what specific work are they doing that's specific to your school goals that ultimately is going to help achieve better student outcomes?
At this point, there's no specifics at this point because they're still creating their action plans. Let me give you an example of an example I used with a group of teachers. We talked about, let's say that the objective or the point of inquiry is the implementation of Routman's optimal learning model. Effective would improve student writing, or even more importantly, the ability for students to begin the writing process. So optimal learning model, it's about modeling for students. I do, we do, you do, is the terminology often used. And so they would actually implement a program and provide evidence on how that has impacted their students' learning in this very specific area. So that's an example I used with some of the staff as we were starting to create these. But at this time, we are at an initial stage, so I don't have the specifics at this point in time.
Thank you. Can I have a follow-up question? Or I guess a statement more so. So I know since I've been a trustee, a lot of the questions around this table have revolved around student outcomes. So I'm encouraged to hear that there's some plans in place, and you said you don't have the specifics now, but I know personally I'm going to be looking forward to seeing those numbers that Trustee Barry had also asked for, to see those outcomes and to see those things improving over the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, a couple of years, to see how we're progressing in that area.
I think to follow up that, both you gentlemen come to our PAC meetings or CPF meetings. Those boards are right there, right behind where we sit when we have those parent council meetings. I encourage you to read those. I encourage you to have conversations with the staff that are there. I encourage you to ask them about that. I mean, that's one of the big pieces here that Mike has talked about, the transparency of the learning goals and the transparency of how we are using these funds to support our teacher learning. The term collective efficacy is used quite regularly now, and the reality is the data is showing that when teachers are working together towards these common goals, the growth that we're seeing in students far surpasses many of the other external factors in terms of influencing student success. So having these teachers generate these common goals, having them visible, having them accountable, and having them open for conversation, I think very optimistic and really looking forward to watching this process as well.
Thank you, and I will read those boards for sure. Diane?
I think I remember that Bossier Early Years had a balanced school day, and you're still doing that. So could you explain just a little bit as to how that's working and why you still continue doing it?
I'm going to defer to you on this one because I'm new to the school still.
I've been fortunate to work in a balanced school day in a couple different schools now. I was at Centennial prior. The anecdotal evidence, I guess, is probably the first and foremost that I see, the effect that it has on students. When students arrive in a traditional school day, my daughter attends in a traditional school day, quite often her lunch is gone by first recess. Now you have a nutritional deficit for the remainder of the day. On top of that, there's that 15-minute recess in a traditional day, where if you're a student in kindergarten, 15 minutes gives you time to put on your ski pants, zip up your jacket, get outside, have a breath of fresh air, and that's kind of the end of your recess. Now there's an opportunity, 2 opportunities daily for a designated nutritional break, as well as a sustained opportunity for play and to use up some of that energy. From a staff perspective, having both taught and worked as an administrator in a balanced school day, what I noticed as a staff member was a significant, when I was working as behavior support at Centennial, was a significant reduction in behavior issues coming to the office. Teachers had that opportunity to actually have a break because, as I mentioned, your kindergarten child, by the time they're outside, that teacher may have an opportunity to run to the bathroom, get back to class before the kids are to them. Now there's just that opportunity for them to be more prepared to help support their students with some of that development in terms of some of their behaviors. And then also it allows for these PLCs that we talk about, because the days, we have 3 100-minute blocks at Bossier Early Years. That allows us to set up our timetable nicely, where we can set up a structure where teachers are able to collaborate within the timetable based on some of the specialist teachers we have there. So from a student standpoint, where they have the opportunity to get proper nutrition throughout the day as well as proper exercise, to a teacher's perspective where they have that opportunity to catch their breath between classes, and from administrator perspective, I've seen nothing but positives from it.
I have a question for you. So you guys have set up some pretty smart goals as you move forward. 100% you're talking about of kindergarten to grade 5 students demonstrate. So the bar is there. Good for you. Good for setting the bar because that you want all of your kids and where you're going to get to. So in numeracy and in literacy, you've got 2 bars. The bar is high, and you want everyone to get there. Congratulations about setting that. And you've got some really good evidence or data sources that you can collect that from. But you've also given us when Trustee Barry asked you a question, is where are you this year? You've got a literacy goal that you had last year that talked about that in your balanced literacy program, approximately 89% of all students had grade level scores. That's amazing. I don't know too many schools around that have 89% of their kids in that area. So good for you. Kudos to you. I'm sure, is that following what Fontes and Pennell, the 89%? Is that where you are with that?
The 89%, from my understanding, and Tony, please correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about the provincial report card data, not necessarily running records. And so my understanding is the term, so when we say at grade level, they're scoring between a 1 and a 4 on the provincial report card, which when you look at it that way, 89%, I looked at it at first, I went 89%, we have to then break down what exactly are we considering to be grade level. So 89% of students are scoring between 1 and 4 on the provincial report card would be the data set for that specific number. If you were to break it down from there, I mean, some schools would say a 3 or a 4 would be grade level. So it depends on what you set as the school in terms of what is grade level within that statement.
Okay, so how you present your data, certainly about great clarification, Mike, for me with that. And whether you're doing it with running records and Fontes and Pennell, or whoever you're choosing that you're going to go ahead and do it with, getting that data will be great because part of it is where are you right now? What you've put around here is by 2021, by engaging in daily purposeful reading and writing, 100% of our kindergarten to grade 5 students will demonstrate developmentally appropriate level, grades level range, literacy skills. Well, I guess the question is, where are you now? And I'm sure that you're looking to find that out. And then you're going to go ahead and put all the things in place, the strategies that you're using, because at the end of the year, where are you? You're going to revise back as to how it went. But we're interested in that data. We're interested in the data to find out what is the measure that you're using. That's great that you've got this kind of information. We are looking for where we are because whatever we're doing or whatever you're doing, is it working? And you need to come back. So we are going to be asking the questions, is it working? So you need to demonstrate that information to us as to what it is. So great that you're providing this. I think that there's some real good things that you and Leanne have worked together on. Kudos to you guys about where you're heading down the path with what we're looking for. Good job.
I think I just want to add to that. We're still also talking about the triangulation of evidence. So using that literacy goal, we want to use the report card data and become really clear on what it is that we mean both at the school level and the divisional level as to grade level. We also want to use our running record evidence, whether it's Fontes and Pennell or PM benchmarks or whatever it is, to make sure that that's aligning. And we want to use our teacher observations and conversations and other products to link in that as well. So we want to give you a really full picture of evidence. That's our mark.
And I think as Mike talked about, with this being a living document and how these goals are going to evolve, one of the changes there is the developmentally appropriate level, that comment in there, because the reality is we do have students that are on IEPs. We do have students that have developmental delays. So we have some students that will be grade 5 range, but developmentally appropriately, they may be working at a kindergarten level. So that's a bit of an important distinction as well. And those students have documents that support that piece of their learning as well, and the work with the clinicians and the specialists to go along with that.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes to answer this question. You have 2 minutes to answer this question. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. You've got in front of the board. What's your biggest challenge that you have? As the board now heads into budget season, what's the biggest challenge that is facing Beaujeu Earlier School?
I think it's a fewfold. We're at an interesting point. Our school is growing. Our teachers are dealing with larger class sizes than they've dealt with before. And I think they're dealing with more diversity in the classroom in terms of not just learning needs, but social, emotional needs as well, and behavioral needs, or behavioral concerns. So I think one of the challenges we have right now is ensuring that our staff is equipped with the skill set and the knowledge to meet the students' learning needs. And ensure that they feel competent in doing so. That's a big undertaking. And I've been open in talking with the staff about some of these things. Yes, it's a difficult job, but we're here to work together towards learning and achieving that goal of meeting all those students' needs. I see that as one of our biggest, one of our largest areas of growth right now within the school.
I think just to put that in perspective a little bit, we've gone, are we over 2 minutes? Okay, I was going to say go Habs, but I wouldn't say that out loud. I think the reality that we've gone from 399 students, I believe 2 years ago, to 462 this year, and our staffings remain very similar, means that our staff is dealing with larger class sizes and additional needs, as Mike's pointed out, and supporting them as they navigate those classrooms is a big piece of what we're working towards with our PLCs.
Thanks, certainly on behalf of the board for coming out and presenting here. We appreciate it. We're looking forward to, as you collect data at the end of the year, we're looking for information because with what you're doing, we want to know if it's working. And it can't be just saying, yes, our kids are working harder, as you know. That can be one of the things, certainly, as to what it is. Certainly teacher observations, but we are looking for some data to prove how things are going and triangulating your data. Perfect. Thanks very much for coming out.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
So it looks like that we are at 5.1, adoption of our minutes. So be resolved that the board adopt the October 1st board meeting minutes. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Jared, seconded by Russ. Perfect. Any questions to the minutes? Hearing none, we'll vote. Nothing was passed. Thank you. Kathy's just coming back, so we'll move to Kathy, the superintendent's report. She has some documentation, I think, that she shared with people. Kathy, the floor is yours. 6.1.
Thank you. The strategic plan priority that I wanted to share with you was increased innovative learning opportunities. I broke it down into two things, and I wanted to point out that what I've provided for you here is a sampling, and I use that word sampling on purpose. I've split it into recent initiatives and then things that have sort of been ongoing in terms of long-term initiatives. So that would be the breakdown. Again, at the end of each of those, I have a bit of a look for recommendations, and on the recommendations, I need to work with my educational leadership team and talk with them about what are some of the things that maybe I don't know about and to pick their brains on what that is. And then to have you guys do the same thing and to challenge yourselves around what do you want to know more about? Where do you want me to dig a little deeper? As promised, you are to read my report, and if there's any questions, I think that our assistant superintendent's report is next, and I don't know if you want to ask questions about this and then roll to that, or you want to wait to the end.
Do any questions for Kath? Don?
You had said 2 high schools doing a curling academy. Could you tell me the 2 high schools?
So we have École Edward Schreyer School and Lac du Bonnie Senior School are doing Curling Academy.
Any others? Hearing none, we'll move on. Jackie? Microphone, microphone.
Just picked a few things to share, primarily in the area of some stuff we have going on in our division for some of our students, children with exceptionalities, some of our students who are part of our life skills program. I wanted to share a bit about Project Search, and I've asked Lars to come and share with us. Lars is the principal of Student Services, in case some of you haven't met him before, kind of my right-hand man. Project Search is something, we are one of, I think, 8 school divisions that partner with Project Search. They work with Manitoba Hydro and HSC, giving employment opportunities and opportunities to develop employment skills with our students. We currently have one student attending Project Search from Edward Schreyer School. He's doing great. I was at a meeting in Winnipeg last week and just really wanted to take the opportunity to share a little bit about his journey. But I'll let Lars do that, as it would have been ESS and Lars that would have been mostly involved with this young man and how he got to where he is today.
Good evening, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about this. You have the information in your board highlighter or on paper. I'm not going to go through the whole series of events on there. You can read that. What we wanted to do was highlight a couple of things that this exemplifies in terms of student services. And those two things would be an example of some innovative planning and also some examples of the work that school teams do at a multi-system level to give you a snapshot of what goes on, as illustrated by this incredible success story. Because this is a student who, in other circumstances, may not have arrived on the trajectory that he is. It's a tough road for people who don't come into life with the assets that most of us do. So he's done well. So the example of the innovation here, as Jackie mentioned, we're one of 8 school divisions that partnership with Project Search. Project Search itself originated in Cincinnati, and Winnipeg is the first location in Canada to have a Project Search opportunity. So pretty innovative in that sense. In Canada, it's the first Project Search location in Canada. They've partnered with SEC LifeWorks, who in turn have partnered with a bunch of school divisions. And then we get down to the smaller groups involved. So there's CFS at the table, there's foster parents at the table, there's resource teachers, there's counselors, classroom teachers, EAs. Jackie and I, we play a role in this planning. And that work in putting that all together usually relies on one person, a case manager that's a resource teacher. So the work that that person has to do over a series of years when those kids enter our system until we're looking for innovative ways to transition them into the community is huge. They're the ones contacting all the people on those teams. They're the ones looking for opportunities. They're the ones trying to find out, is this program a match for that student? So we just wanted to give this as an example of the incredible amount of work that case managers and the school teams do, right down to the parents and the kids and involving them. So to illustrate that with this particular situation, this is a student who had completed the required courses in the areas that were needed to be considered a graduate. And things have gone up and down for this student. There were periods of time when people were greatly concerned about the student, and there were periods of times when things had gone very well. In the last year, when things seem to be going very well, this happens a lot with students with exceptionalities in their final year. School was no longer purposeful.
schools have to be much more than about the courses and the subjects that kids are involved in. So in terms of the courses that this person was in, they weren't necessarily meeting the need to transition him into the community and into adulthood. He was focused, as he rightly should be, on like, what am I going to do when I'm finished with school? And what is employment going to look like for me? What can I do? So at the school level, they started with things as simple as volunteer experiences, going to local stores and learning what jobs were there, what could they do, with some EA support, and then reducing that to promote independence. And then they connected with supported employment options in town, which people can actually get paid to participate in. They have to go through an interview process. They have to meet the requirements of the job. There has to be a match for them. And this student now was excelling because he had purpose. So much so that he took on a leadership role at Supported Employment Options and became a leader of a group of other kids. So this set him up now to say, okay, Project Search is a fantastic opportunity. So all those little steps along the way have gotten the student to where he is, and not to underestimate the power of the individual student as well. He's got some tremendous assets in terms of a sense of humor. He engages other people in Project Search. They love to have him there because he's the one that gets the conversation going with other kids. Those are his assets he brings to the table. Those aren't all things that we've done for him. But we just wanted to use this as an example to demonstrate some of the things that are happening and how complex and multi-layered things are, and that there's thinking outside the box that's required to identify for kids what is the purpose of school. It's not always, and actually it's probably seldom, about just the courses. It's about what am I going for and what am I going to do when I transition into the community. So if there are questions specifically about that, I'd be happy to answer any of them if you have.
Thanks, Lars. Any questions?
This is a great example of how resilient people are. In multi-system planning, the school division agreed to pay the fees for programming and Project Search. Other partners at the table had to take care of transportation or other costs because in multi-system planning, the school doesn't always bear all the costs of everything to do. So unfortunately, everything was all set up, and lo and behold, I think it was one of Selkirk Bus, they went out of business. So week before he's supposed to start and all excited about Project Search, he can't get there. Well, social workers were calling other social workers that worked in other areas who they know lived locally, like, can we get this kid a ride? So everybody around the team was just clawing and scratching to find a way to get this kid into programming. We eventually found out that someone who works in Project Search actually lived in the area, so they, well, we'll take him for a couple of weeks. Well, he's done so well with that person, and he's such a cool kid, they're like, we're just going to keep doing this. So that's a great example of people trying to find out how to solve this problem. Because transportation is an issue for some programs. Schools that are further away from bigger centers than others have a very difficult time finding those matches for kids to give them purpose because the opportunities are less often.
Thanks, Lars. Anyone else? Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Lars, for going ahead and making that presentation. Any questions then for Kathy or Lars or Jackie?
Is it still on?
Hearing none, let's move on to Secretary Treasurer's report.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. My report is as filed. The only thing I'll highlight is coming up soon. We're getting to that time of the year, and we all start thinking about budget. It's budget season, so probably as soon as next meeting, we'll be asking you for some input on when you'll be able to meet, into December and January, start really nailing down the budget. Other than that, I'll just take questions on my report.
Anyone questions for Scott? Don, sorry. Thank you.
I'm not quite sure this question on the report, but I'm going to ask you this question anyway. the in-service we had on a couple of Fridays ago, we were quoted that it cost $250,000 to put on the PD. Could I get a breakdown, or could the board get a breakdown of actually how much it cost us, not excluding salary, because the salary of those students are probably, of those, not the students, of the teachers and the EAs and the bus drivers are probably going to be paid anyway. So to possibly get a breakdown.
Absolutely, we can bring a report to the next meeting for sure.
So to clarify that, there was somebody standing up there that said that I was talking to Mr. Carlson and that we spent approximately $250,000.
If I remember correctly, that person had purple hair.
Yeah, but I do remember talking to Mr. Carlson so that he could say that that was the approximate cost to it. So I just wanted to share that. I just didn't take that figure out of my... Yeah. And the reference was made to is that, hey, we know we're spending a fair bit of money, but part of it is that we want you to look after yourselves and learn about yourselves because we want you there. And because there's no better, a replacement for you isn't, and I didn't want to ditch all of our substitutes or substitute teachers, but you know what, a classroom teacher, an EA, they're the best ones to help our kids, not substitutes. And so that was the conversation.
We do plan to bring in some of the feedback from the divisional day, but I can offer one anecdotal piece, is that at 3 o'clock, we've had professional development days in the past where we have been off to sessions and those kinds of things. We asked all staff to come back to the hall after their sessions at 3 o'clock to participate in a debriefing and a conversational activity with their peers. I was coming back from Edward Schreier School because I was locking up after the sessions had ended, and I came in the back door to, again, I think almost every single human being was in that room with crayons and recipe cards, writing down information, and excited and still engaged at the end of the day. So we have all of that information and feedback that we'll bring to you. I stood at the back of the room for 5 minutes and not a single soul knew I was in the room. So that is, again, an anecdotal piece of how engaged folks were, well, Leanne might have, and Jackie might have noticed, how engaged folks were at the end of the day when we wrapped up. So kudos to all of our staff.
Anything else for Scott? Diane?
No, but since we're on the topic, I just, I wasn't there and I wondered if the chair had any role in agreeing for that day, because I don't know what happened.
So I did show up with purple hair, Diane, because I had my hair dyed just because I thought it would look good in purple. My school, anyways, I had purple hair. So what I did was I did, on behalf of the board, thank everybody. I made reference to building relationships that people needed to. I tried to touch on most of our employee groups about going ahead, the importance of building relationships with our kids. I then turned around and said, you know, we are spending a fair bit of money on the day today, but we think that it's money well spent because we want you to look after yourselves and because we need you there in our buildings. And just basically close to say thanks, have a great day. Kathy then just talked a little bit about the day, but yeah, I did, yeah. Greetings from the board, basically. Yep. Let's move forward then onto board business 8.1. We have an indemnity bylaw. We have a third reading. Be it resolved, the board approve the third reading of the indemnity bylaw 36367-19 as presented by the Finance Committee. I need a mover and a seconder. Mover by Art. Seconder by Robin. Questions to it? Hearing none, we'll vote. So it passed with an 8-1 vote. Thank you. 8.2 is a compensation disclosure report. Be it resolved, the board received a compensation disclosure report for 2018 as submitted. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Diane, seconded by Diane. Any questions? Okay, then we'll vote. Thank you. past 9, nothing. Thank you for doing that. There's nothing more then that we need for that, Scott? Okay.
We don't have a requirement this year if the board wishes. Starting with the upcoming year, there will be a requirement.
So we have committee reports. Or this is for information, okay? So we have information about the Finance Committee, October 22nd, Policy Committee, October 17th, Procedures Update. This is for information. Help me, someone? Okay, Kath?
Last year's policy committee had one outstanding action, and that was to relook at our languages procedures. So Jackie and Suzanne and our principals and folks have looked at it and come up with a much more well-crafted procedure for our languages programs. So it's for information around our last to-do item.
Procedure. Just in terms of some of the stuff in there that might have financial implications, have you looked at that one in the writing of the document? Or HR implications?
Yeah, so we wrote the procedure based on what it is that we have happening right now. So the former procedure that we had really didn't kind of address what we were doing in schools. So there aren't any financial implications because our procedure just is essentially a match to what we're currently doing. I don't think there are any new implications for us.
Others, are we good to move on? Okay. Board learning sessions. That's for information. Tell me what the information is. Oh, yeah. Thank you. We're trying to find 3 dates for us to go ahead and do board learning sessions as Colleen talked to us about. There's one that's still outstanding that Diane has brought up, and it's certainly around communication. And there's a number of them that are there for us to do some talking about. So we want to pick some dates on board learning sessions. So these would be special meetings that we would go ahead and have, and then to move forward. So we're looking for some dates. So can people get their calendars out? And we'll try to, people can throw out some dates and see where we are with board learning sessions. Yes, sir.
Do you want some dates or a date?
I don't need a date.
November 14th.
November 14th? Okay. And again, we're going to try and do this. If not, we'll put a doodle out and get it. But if we can get this November the 14th, that's something that we can go ahead and... Yeah, I'm not here either. Sorry. Yeah, that's good. That's why we're trying. So November 14th doesn't work. No. Try another one. November 21st. So we don't want to meet at 6 to 8 and you go to MSBA with all kind of fresh ideas from our learning session? How about 5 to 7 on the 21st? 5 to 7. Looking good? 5 to 7? 5 to 7 on the 21st? Looks like we got bobbleheads. All right. Us? All right. 5 to 7. Okay, 5 to 7 on the 21st. Woohoo! Right on. Okay, let's try another one. See if we can get lucky. Come on. Can we get another one? December the 5th. I guess that's gonna depend, no? Okay. We're gonna start to get into Christmas concerts, so be careful of that. 3rd of December. Not then. No, it's in the, December the 3rd.
The 3 weeks in December, we will have Christmas concerts. So probably your only safe days will be Mondays or Fridays. I'll take the challenge, but I think Canola was on the 2nd last year, or whatever that first Tuesday was.
All right, so we'll try with December the 3rd. And if the Christmas concert is set up, well, it's out. We don't do it. Okay, December the 3rd. Can we do 5 to 7? I know, we'll figure it out. 5 to 7, does that work for everybody? December the 3rd? I know. We'll just do it earlier. Okay, and let's choose one more date. Okay, we'll just choose 2 for now. Okay, and see where we go? Okay. Yeah. Well, that's why we got these dates beforehand, because we're going to do some great board learning prior to it, because who wants to talk about budget all the time? Okay, so we've got the 2 dates. Thank you very much for going ahead and doing that, board learning sessions. We have on here professional development information, Trustee Barry to attend. Trustee Barry, we already have that. That's just for information. Anyone? Yeah, that's right. Trustee Barry, we did vote on it. We did vote that 10-page report that was coming back right afterwards, so thanks very much for sharing that with us. Okay. Financial monitoring plan, it's for information. We don't have any in front of us, right?
No, finance is next week's.
Thank you. Board correspondence. You sent all that information. Nice to know. Do I have to read all these nice to knows that are on here? Is everybody okay that we have nice to knows 12.0? Diane? Okay. 12.1. Diane, can you put your microphone on?
They put out a book, and we often donate to put something in it as a donation that we make. And it comes from the Legion. I believe it comes from the Legion. And usually it comes out September, October, a letter from them asking for a donation, and we've usually made a motion to pay for so many inches in the booklet.
Yeah, do you recall what that was, Stacey? We did get a request. It hasn't come to the board. The book is out already. Yes. And does have our advertisement in it, by the way. Yes, it does. Yeah. It's put up by the Legions. You recall the name of it, Steve? Heritage. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about, Dan.
No, go ahead, Art.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, like, I've gone to the Legion service here for many years at the membership service. And anyways, all they want is they want a representative from Sunrise School Division to ARE. And they always want your name in the program. So is that similar to what you're talking about, or what are you talking about?
Can I just ask that for the next meeting that that we ask Stacey to just do a research on our motions regarding this Legion donation that we make, and bring the previous motions forward to the board, and we could probably bring one for the next meeting and see what amount we donate, because we have made motions for it, and it is for a Legion book. And maybe just give us the history and bring it back to the board. Thanks.
Roundtable, we good with doing that? We good? Okay, Stace, we got the direction there? Thank you. Did anyone else want to talk about this Remembrance Day? Kath?
This was just to give people a heads up that the Remembrance Day services at the schools are happening on November 8th. So by Public Schools Act, we need to have them on November 8th. If you want to put that in your calendar for your school Remembrance Day services, they don't have a choice about the date, but they do pick what time it is. Jennifer is currently gathering what time the services are, and we will forward that to you as soon as we have that from all the schools.
All right. So then there's a bunch of nice to know information there from 12.1 right up to 12.8. And does anybody have any, there's information? Questions from the public? Leanne, can you bring in the microphone?
The questions on the agenda, do they have to be on the agenda, or could you ask any question?
The question is to be on the agenda. You can ask the question. If it means then that we will get back to you about it. If we haven't talked about it tonight, but if you give us the question, we'll get back to you for sure about it.
All right, well, I've been asking the cost of the Green Church, and I was told it's going to cost me $660 to get the answer.
Okay, so you're asking the cost of what it costs for what of the Green Church? Like, what are you asking for, the cost?
Well, from when you started using it until up to date. And I was told it's going to cost me $660 to get that information.
Okay, so it's not going to cost you $660 right now. What we will do is that we will look into it to find out what it is, and if there is a cost to it, for depending on if we have to do research to get it, you may, if you're trying to file a, help me here, if you're trying to file a FIPA, Freedom of Information Act, if there's some cost associated with it, yes, you may be charged with it. You'll be told about that up front. So right now, if you've been told that $660, maybe I've spoken out of turn, is that I'm not aware of that cost. So what we will do is we'll look into that, and we'll make sure we get back to you. Fair enough?
Okay.
Okay. I guess you're the only one here, so there's nobody else. Do you have any other? So we will need to go into in-camera. We have one item from in-camera that we need to go ahead and deal with. So let's take 3.5 minutes.